Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Mali's put a stop to rotations of UN peacekeepers from the organisation's MINUSMA mission. The suspension comes just days after 49 Ivorian soldiers were arrested and labelled by Bamako as mercenaries. Yamoussoukro says that they're there for logistical support for MINUSMA. Also, Gambia holds officials from the 22 dictatorial regime of Yahya Jammeh to account. A court sentences a former spy chief and 4 others to death over the murder of a political activist in 2016. The sentences will be converted to life in prison. And 3 years after the launch of a groundbreaking pilot program for the world's first malaria vaccines, there's frustration from Africa that more shots aren't yet available. The full launch has been delayed by years, in stark contrast to the speed with which developed countries locked down COVID-19 vaccines. But first, the military junta in Mali has suspended UN peacekeeping rotations. It comes after the junta arrested dozens of Ivorian soldiers they claim are mercenaries. But Ivory Coast says that they are contractors brought in to support the United Nations mission. Mali didn't specifically mention the spat in Thursday's declaration, but says that contingents of MINUSMA personnel flying in and out of the country can only resume after talks. Camille Nedlek has the story.
The UN is no longer welcome in Mali. The military junta suspended rotations of UN personnel, citing national security concerns. Bamako could lift it if a meeting to coordinate the movement of UN peacekeepers goes ahead. It comes after Mali arrested 49 Ivorian soldiers it claims are mercenaries, trying to topple the government. But Ivory Coast insists those soldiers are contractors. They're at the behest of the UN.
In order to support its 2 contingents that are in the MINUSMA, namely the Mopti Company and the Timbuktu Battalion, Ivory Coast needed, after authorization from the UN and following a memorandum of understanding with the company's Sahelian aviation services, to install a national support element in Bamako, the capital, as a forward logistic base.
MINUSMA is one of the UN's biggest peacekeeping operations, with around 14,000 personnel from dozens of countries. It was launched in 2013 to tackle the rising jihadist threat in the country. Though Mali suspended its air operations for several days back in January, the mission's mandate was renewed in June. But the resolution makes no mention of the status afforded to UN contractors such as national support elements.
We know that until recently, deployments and missions have been planned and conducted without Mali necessarily being involved. But more and more we're seeing a renewed interest on the part of the military elite in power, whose interest is in controlling everything that happens on the territory.
The suspension has left thousands of peacekeepers currently serving in Mali stranded in the country, and the UN is calling for Bamako to urgently come to a settlement.
5 former members of the Gambia's intelligence agency have been sentenced to death for the 2016 killing of a political activist called Solo Sandeng. The murder triggered public outrage that contributed to the downfall of President Yahya Jammeh, who'd governed the country for 22 years. Sam Bradpeace has more.
Solo Sandeng was an opposition activist with the Gambia's United Democratic Party. Back in 2016, he led a peaceful march calling for political reforms. He was ultimately arrested, beaten, tortured and killed, leaving behind 9 children. The Gambian High Court has finally found 5 people guilty of his murder, including the country's former head of the National Intelligence Agency, a man called Yankuba Badji. Many Gambians see Badji as an instrumental figure during the 22-year rule of former President Yahya Jammeh, one that was characterized by abuses such as killings, rape and torture. Badji and 4 others were given a death sentence, but because the death penalty has been issued a moratorium in the Gambia since 2018, it's more likely that they will face life in prison. Back in May, the Gambian government said that it would move to try and prosecute the former president, Yahya Jammeh, for crimes committed under his watch. Jammeh himself is thought to be currently residing in exile in Equatorial Guinea.
Well, the Super Falcons took flight and celebrated a double victory on Thursday night after qualifying for next year's Women's World Cup and moving forward to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations semi-finals with a 1-0 victory over Cameroon. The Nigerian defending champions are the only top African team to reach 9 FIFA World Cups and have set up a clash with WAFCON hosts Morocco. A day earlier, Zambia's Copper Queens made history in Casablanca by securing their World Cup berth by making it through to the WAFCON semi-finals after beating Senegal 4-2 on penalties. Malaria is the top killer of children across Africa. Scientists have been developing a vaccine for decades, but there's frustration that it's taking so long for shots to reach more of the continent. A jab made by British pharma firm GSK could make a huge difference, even though its efficacy rate is just 30%. Even with that limited boost, communities are clamouring for more funding so that the vaccine can reach those that need it most. Camille Edlek has more.
A few tears spilt, but many lives saved. Children in Kenya are being vaccinated against malaria as part of a pilot program. Malawi and Ghana are also a part of the scheme, which has so far vaccinated almost 2 million children.
Malaria is a leading killer of young children. So it's among the top 3 diseases that kill children: diarrhea diseases, and pneumonia, and then malaria. So it's a big, big problem. So in some places, you'll even get in the pediatric ward, 70% of admissions are due to malaria.
GSK aim to make up to 15 million doses per year until 2028, although the WHO says this is nowhere near enough. As the vaccine must be administered 4 times per patient, around 100 million doses per year would be needed. Supplies can only be boosted with more international funding. The vaccine has a 30% efficacy, far below the WHO goal of 75%. But hundreds of thousands of people die from malaria every year, and even that small extra protection adds up. This Kenyan mother has seen the benefits firsthand.
I have 2 sons. My elder son has 4 years and 8 months, but the smaller one is 1 year and a half. Yeah, my elder one was not vaccinated and he was sick on and off. He had malaria today, tomorrow no malaria. The other day malaria, the other day no malaria. But the smaller one, he gets the vaccine and he was not even sick.
Oxford University is developing another malaria vaccine that achieved 77% efficacy in trials.
Now, Africa's fastest man will make it to the World Athletics Championships after securing a last-minute visa to the United States on Thursday. Kenyan Ferdinand Omanyala will have to start his 100-metre campaign just hours after arriving on Friday. 26-year-old Omanyala is the 3rd quickest man in the world this season. He's set his sights on at least reaching the final of the 100 metres in Oregon, targeting a time of 9.6 seconds. And we here at Eye on Africa, of course, wish him the very best of luck. That is, though, all we have time for. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.